A little girl screamed, "Daddy, that's my brother!" The words cut through the hum of Central Park like a sudden crack of thunder. James Whittaker froze mid-step, his heart jolting against his ribs. His daughter's small hand tightened around his, her little finger pointing ahead with the kind of certainty only a child could have. "Daddy, look, that's my brother. He looks just like me, just like you." James's throat went dry. For a moment, the world blurred around him. The swaying trees, the joggers passing by, the distant chatter of tourists. He followed Emily's gaze and his eyes landed on a boy. A frail figure no older than 5 sat hunched on the edge of a fountain, a battered cardboard box by his feet. His knees were drawn up against his chest, his small arms wrapped tightly around them as though he could hold himself together by sheer force. His clothes were too thin for the chilly autumn air, his hair unkempt, his sneakers caked in mud. James swallowed hard. His instincts as a father tugged at him, an ache in his chest that had never really gone away since Claire died. Emily's mother had been the warmth of their home, the glue that held everything together. Since cancer took her, James had poured himself into his daughter, burying his grief in work during the week and clinging to their weekend rituals. Central Park had become their sanctuary. But now, Emily's cry, her innocent, piercing certainty, ripped open something he thought he'd sealed away. "Sweetheart," James said softly, crouching to meet her eyes. Her golden hair tumbled across her shoulders, and her face was lit with pure conviction. "You can't just—" "But it's true," Emily insisted, tugging at his sleeve. "I know it, Daddy. Look at him, please." James turned back. And for the first time, he saw it. The shape of the boy's face, the curve of his nose, the same piercing blue eyes that stared blankly at the ground. His breath caught. A strange sensation crawled over his skin, like déjà vu mixed with dread. The boy raised his head at that moment as if sensing their gaze. His eyes met James's, and James's chest tightened. Those eyes, deep, haunted, yet startlingly familiar, were like looking into a mirror of his own childhood. James stumbled backward. A step, his hand pressed against the nearest tree for balance. A wave of dizziness washed over him. He heard his daughter's voice again, urgent and certain. "Daddy, that's my brother." He wanted to tell her she was wrong, that it was just a coincidence. But the words wouldn't come. His legs felt weak. The air left his lungs. And then, to Emily's shock, James's tall, composed figure crumbled. He sank to his knees on the damp grass, tears spilling down his face before he could stop them. "Daddy?" Emily whispered, frightened now. She knelt beside him, wrapping her small arms around his shoulders. "Why are you crying?" James couldn't speak. The memories came in a flood. Long-buried secrets he had locked away, the kind he never thought his daughter would unearth with a single sentence. Because once, years ago, before wealth and success, before Claire and Emily, there had been choices made out of desperation. A broken love. A son he had never met. His voice broke as he forced out a whisper, "Oh God, what have I done?" Emily pulled back to look at him, her wide blue eyes glistening. "Daddy, I don't understand. Who is he?" James forced himself to breathe. The boy by the fountain had shifted, watching them now with wary curiosity, as though he knew something was happening but didn't dare approach. His small frame shivered against the chill. People passed by without noticing, their busy lives sweeping them along like leaves in the wind. But James noticed, and it was as if the boy was a ghost from his past, only he was flesh and bone, sitting just a few steps away. James wiped his face with trembling hands, trying to regain composure for Emily's sake. He stood, took her hand again, and walked slowly toward the fountain. Each step felt like walking against a storm, his chest tight with guilt, fear, and something he hadn't felt in years, hope. The boy flinched as they drew closer, his body stiffening like a stray animal bracing for harm. His small hands clutched the cardboard box tighter, his knuckles pale. James slowed, lowering his voice to something gentle, something fatherly. "Hey there," he said softly. "Are you okay?" The boy's lips parted, but no sound came. His eyes darted from James to Emily, then back again, cautious, uncertain. Emily, unburdened by adult hesitation, let go of her father's hand and stepped forward. She crouched in front of the boy, her pink dress brushing the ground. "Hi," she said simply, her voice like a melody against the cold air. "I'm Emily. What's your name?" The boy blinked at her, then whispered, almost inaudible, "Ethan." James's heart nearly stopped. The name hit him like a bolt of lightning, echoing memories of a woman he once loved, a woman whose voice still haunted his dreams. The name she had chosen for the son he never held. His son. His knees buckled again, and he steadied himself on the fountain's edge. Emily looked back at him, puzzled. "Daddy, did you hear? His name is Ethan." James's eyes filled with tears as he nodded slowly. His voice cracked, rough with grief and disbelief. "Yes, sweetheart, I heard." The boy's gaze shifted again, studying James with a strange intensity, as if piecing together a puzzle. James tried to smile, though his lips quivered. "Ethan, do you have anyone here with you? A parent? Someone looking after you?" Ethan shook his head faintly, curls bouncing. "No, just me." His little voice was hoarse but steady. He clutched his box tighter. "I live here, at the shelter. Sometimes." James's stomach twisted. A child, abandoned to the streets, left to survive with nothing but a cardboard box of belongings. And that child might very well be his own blood. Emily frowned, her innocence cutting through the heaviness. "But you can't be alone. That's not fair. Everyone should have a home." She looked at her father, pleading. "Daddy, we can help him, can't we? Please." James opened his mouth, but no words came. His chest rose and fell with the weight of everything pressing down on him. His past, his choices, his wealth that had bought him everything except peace. And now, standing before him, was a chance for redemption in the shape of a fragile boy. With familiar blue eyes, James's pulse thundered in his ears. He looked down at Ethan again, the boy's thin frame trembling against the fountain's stone. 1,000 thoughts raced through his mind, each heavier than the last. Could this really be happening? Could the son he once turned his back on be? Sitting here in rags, clutching a cardboard box. Emily tugged on his sleeve again, impatient with his silence. "Daddy, we have to help him. He's my brother. I just know it." James's throat constricted. The word brother struck him like a blade, sharp and undeniable. He forced his lips to move. "Ethan, where's your mom?" The boy's eyes flickered, shadowed by memories far too heavy for a child to carry. He shifted, hugging the box tighter. She got sick. They took her away." His voice wavered, then fell to a whisper. "She never came back." James's body stiffened. He didn't need Ethan to say her name. He already knew. The ghost of a woman he once loved, long before Claire, rose from the depths of his past. Her face, her laughter, the day they had parted in anger. She had been carrying his child, and he had walked away, too consumed with ambition, too terrified of responsibility. Now, years later, here was the boy, his son, alone. James swallowed, his chest aching as he crouched down to meet Ethan's eyes. I'm so sorry," he whispered, though he wasn't sure if he was speaking to Ethan, to the woman he had lost, or to himself. Ethan tilted his head, confused. "Why are you sorry?" Emily stepped closer, her small hand reaching for Ethan's. He flinched, then hesitated, before letting her fingers curl gently around his own. She beamed at him. "It's okay. Daddy makes everything better. He can make you better, too." James's heart shattered at her innocence. How could he explain the years of mistakes to her? How could he tell her that the brother she had just found had been left to face the world alone? "Ethan," James said carefully, "do you stay at the shelter all the time?" The boy shook his head. "Sometimes they don't have room. I sleep near the church then. The pastor gives me food when he can." He paused, his eyes lowering to the box. "But I keep my things with me, just in case." James glanced at the box, his stomach twisting as he noticed what was inside. A threadbare stuffed bear with one eye missing, a small notebook with bent pages, and a faded photograph of a young woman smiling. A woman James once knew, whose smile still haunted him. His vision blurred with tears. Emily leaned closer, whispering to Ethan, "You don't have to keep things in a box anymore. You can come with us." James's breath caught. His daughter had spoken the words he was too afraid to voice. Could he? Could he just take this boy into his home, into his life? The weight of responsibility was suffocating, yet the thought of leaving Ethan here, of walking away again, was unbearable. Ethan's eyes widened at Emily's words. His lips trembled, and for the first time, James saw the hope flicker in them. You mean it? Emily nodded firmly, as though the decision had already been made. Of course, brothers and sisters stay together. Daddy says family is everything. James shut his eyes briefly. Claire, forgive me. I failed before, but maybe I can fix it now. When he opened them, he placed a trembling hand on Ethan's shoulder. The boy tensed but didn't pull away. Ethan, James said softly, would you like to come with us for now? Somewhere warm, somewhere safe. Ethan's lips parted, his breath hitching as though the very idea was foreign to him. He nodded, faintly, not trusting his own voice. James stood, extending his hand. Ethan looked at it cautiously, then slowly, hesitantly, placed his small hand in James's. The contact sent a surge through James's chest, a connection both terrifying and sacred. Emily grinned and squeezed Ethan's other hand. Together, the three of them walked out of the park. As they moved through the city streets, James felt the weight of stares. A wealthy man in a tailored coat leading two children, one neatly dressed, one ragged and trembling. But James no longer cared. Every step felt like a step toward redemption. They reached James's car parked along Fifth Avenue. The sleek black vehicle gleamed under the afternoon sun, a stark contrast to Ethan's dirt-smudged clothes and cardboard box. The boy hesitated, pulling back slightly. I don't belong there, Ethan murmured. James knelt, meeting his eyes. You belong with us, with family. The word family lingered in the air like a promise. Slowly, Ethan allowed himself to be guided into the back seat beside Emily. She immediately showed him her toy rabbit, chattering away about their house, her school, her favorite pancakes. Ethan listened in silence, clutching the stuffed bear from his box. But a faint smile tugged at his lips. James sat in the driver's seat, his hands gripping the wheel, his mind a storm. He glanced at them in the rearview mirror, Emily's bright innocence, Ethan's fragile quiet, and his throat tightened. For the first time in years, James wasn't thinking about board meetings, stock markets, or his fortune. He was thinking about the boy who might be his son and the little girl who already believed it without doubt. When they arrived at his penthouse, Ethan froze at the sight of the tall glass building towering into the sky. He looked down at his torn sneakers, then at Emily's polished shoes, shame flickering across his face. James knelt again, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Don't look at the building, Ethan. Look at me. You're safe here. Inside, the warmth of the apartment enveloped them. The polished floors, the soft rugs, the glow of the fireplace. It was a different world. Ethan's eyes darted around nervously, his small hands gripping his bear tighter. Emily tugged him toward her room. Come on, I'll show you my books. You can pick anyone to read tonight. James watched them disappear down the hallway, his heart heavy yet strangely light. He collapsed onto the sofa, burying his face in his hands. The tears came again, silent but relentless. Years of ambition, mistakes, and regrets spilled out. And then he felt it. A small weight on his lap. He lifted his head. Ethan had returned, his little face solemn. Without a word, the boy wrapped his arms around James's neck. James froze, then held him tightly, his chest breaking open. In that embrace, James knew. This was no coincidence. Fate had given him another chance. Night settled over the city like a velvet curtain, and James found himself pacing his study. The fire burned low in the hearth, shadows flickering across the shelves lined with books he had never read. Desk lay the photograph Ethan had carried. The woman smiling, her hair caught by the wind. James reached for it, his hand trembling as memories he had buried clawed their way back. Her name was Sophia. She had been kind, full of light, and utterly unafraid of the man James used to be. They had shared laughter, secrets, and plans that never came true. When she told him she was expecting, he had panicked. The weight of responsibility felt heavier than the empire he was trying to build. He left her with promises that turned to silence. Now, years later, the truth stood in his home. His son, hungry, alone, carrying a box of scraps instead of toys, was proof of everything James had failed to be. James pressed the photograph to his chest, his throat burning. I should have been there, he whispered to the empty room. God, I should have been there. From down the hallway came the soft sound of laughter. Emily's voice rang out, bright and sweet, as she read a story aloud. Ethan's quieter chuckle followed, uncertain but real. James leaned against the doorway, unseen, watching them. Emily sat cross-legged on her bed, animatedly flipping pages, while Ethan clutched his bear, listening intently. His eyes shone with a light James hadn't seen earlier in the park. For a moment, James saw not the boy in rags, but the child he should have known, the one who should have grown up with love, with security, with family. His heart clenched. Later that night, after Emily had fallen asleep, James found Ethan sitting alone at the window, gazing at the skyline. His small figure looked fragile against the vast city lights. "Can't sleep?" James asked gently. Ethan shook his head. "It's too quiet." James sat beside him. "You're not used to quiet?" Ethan's eyes stayed on the city. Shelters are loud, people yelling, doors banging, babies crying. At night, I don't feel alone. But here, he hesitated, his voice dropping. "It feels like maybe I don't belong." The words cut James deeper than any blade. He leaned forward, forcing his voice steady. "You belong here, Ethan. With us." Ethan turned to him, his expression raw. "But why? You don't even know me." James swallowed hard. "Because I should have known you. I should have been there from the start." His voice broke, his confession spilling into the silence. "I'm your father." Ethan's eyes widened, his breath catching. My dad?" Tears burned James's eyes as he nodded. "Yes, and I know I don't deserve it. But if you'll let me, I want to be your dad now." The boy stared at him, stunned, torn between disbelief and longing. Then, without warning, he threw his arms around James's neck, clutching him tightly. "I wanted to believe you'd come back." Ethan whispered into his shoulder. "Mom said you were out there somewhere. She said you'd find me one day." James held him, his body trembling with grief and relief. "I'm here, Ethan. I'm not leaving again, I promise." But promises were easy. The world outside his penthouse walls would not make it easy. The next morning, as sunlight spilled into the apartment, James's phone buzzed relentlessly. Bored. Members, business partners, the media. His sudden appearance with a ragged child at his side had already sparked whispers. Paparazzi photos of Ethan and Emily holding hands on the sidewalk had spread online overnight. Headlines speculated wildly. Millionaire with secret child, hidden scandal, unknown heir. James sat at the breakfast table, his jaw tight as Emily poured cereal into Ethan's bowl. She chattered about cartoons, oblivious to the storm brewing beyond the glass walls. Ethan listened quietly, occasionally glancing at James as though sensing the tension. By mid-morning, his lawyer, Richard, arrived. His sharp suit and clipped tone carried the chill of the corporate world James once ruled with ease. "James?" he said, lowering his voice. "We need to talk. Who is this boy?" James's eyes hardened. "He's my son." Richard blinked, taken aback. "Your son?" "James, this will cause an uproar. Shareholders, the press, the board, they'll demand answers. You can't just bring a child into your life without..." "Without what?" James snapped. "Without hiding him? Without abandoning him like I already did once?" His voice thundered through the room, startling even himself. "I won't do it again. Not for the board, not for my reputation, not for anyone." Richard exhaled, rubbing his temple. "You're risking everything. The company, your fortune. My fortune means nothing." James cut him off. His gaze softened as he looked at Ethan, who sat silently at the table, wide-eyed. "This is what matters. My children. My family." Emily slipped her hand into Ethan's, beaming proudly. "See? I told you Daddy makes everything better." For the first time, Ethan smiled openly, the shadow of fear lifting just slightly. But the world outside wasn't ready to forgive. By evening, reporters crowded the street below James's building. Questions shouted from every angle, cameras flashing. Some accused him of scandal, others of betrayal. The whispers grew louder. Was this child proof of a hidden affair? Was James Whittaker unfit to lead? James stood by the window, watching the chaos. His chest tightened with fear, not for himself, but for Ethan and Emily. He could handle scrutiny, but could they? Behind him, Ethan's small voice broke the silence. "Did I cause this?" James turned, stricken. "No, never. This is not your fault." He knelt, gripping Ethan's shoulders. "Listen to me. None of this is because of you. It's because of me, my mistakes, my choices. but I will protect you. No matter what. Ethan's eyes glistened. Even if they don't want me here? James's voice shook. Especially then. That night, James made a decision. If the world wanted answers, he would give them. Not through whispered statements or hidden denials, but face to face, with truth. For Ethan, for Emily, for the family he was building, no matter how late. The next morning, the storm reached its height. News vans lined the street outside James Whittaker's penthouse, cameras flashing every time the curtains shifted. Online, speculation turned vicious, debates about inheritance, whispers of scandal, even doubt about Ethan's parentage. James could feel the tension pressing down on the apartment like a weight. Emily tried to distract Ethan with her dolls, but he sat apart, clutching his bear, his face pale. Every time a camera flashed outside, he flinched. By noon, James had made his choice. He wouldn't hide. He wouldn't let fear shape his son's life again. He stood in the living room, straightening his tie as Emily and Ethan watched him nervously. "Daddy, are you going to yell at the people?" Emily asked softly. James knelt, brushing a curl from her forehead. "No, sweetheart. I'm going to tell them the truth." Ethan's small voice broke through. "What if they don't like me?" James's chest ached as he cupped the boy's face. "Then they'll have to answer to me because I love you. And nothing, do you hear me? Nothing can change that." When he stepped outside, the chaos erupted. Microphones shoved toward him, reporters shouted questions, flashes blinded his eyes. James lifted a hand, his voice cutting through the storm. "I will only speak once. Listen carefully." The crowd stilled. Even the cameras seemed to pause. "This boy," James said, his arm around Ethan's shoulders, "is my son. His name is Ethan. For too long I failed him. I let fear and ambition blind me, and because of that, he suffered. But no more. From this day forward, he is my family. He is my heir. And anyone who questions his place questions mine as well." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Questions flew, about the mother, about the estate, about Emily. James raised his voice over them. "All. My daughter Emily calls him brother. And she is right. They are both my children, both my heart. And if the world cannot accept that, then the world can keep its money, its power, and its approval. I will not sacrifice them again." The raw conviction in his voice left even the harshest reporters stunned. For the first time, James didn't sound like the untouchable millionaire, but like a father, broken, repentant, yet unyielding. He turned, guiding Ethan back inside, shutting the door firmly behind him. His hands trembled, but his heart felt lighter than it had in years. Inside, Emily cheered, throwing her arms around Ethan. "See? Daddy told everyone. Now they all know you're my brother." For the first time, Ethan laughed. Really laughed. The sound was small, rough, but full of life. James sank onto the sofa, pulling both children close. Tears blurred his vision as he whispered, "This is all I ever needed." Days turned to weeks. The scandal faded as quickly as it had erupted. Investors threatened, but James stood firm. To everyone's surprise, his honesty, his vulnerability, made him more respected than before. His empire didn't crumble. Instead, it grew stronger, grounded in something deeper than money. But the real change wasn't in the boardroom. It was at home. Ethan no longer sat at windows like an outsider. He ran through the halls with Emily, his laughter echoing against the marble. His cheeks grew fuller, his eyes brighter. He began to sleep without fear, eat without hesitation. Slowly, he blossomed. One evening, as snow drifted softly outside, James found Ethan at the piano. His small fingers pressed clumsy notes, but the melody was tender, halting. James sat beside him. "Where did you learn that?" he asked. Ethan shrugged. "Mom hummed it sometimes, said it was a lullaby." His voice dropped. "I didn't want to forget her." James's eyes burned as he placed a hand over his son's. "Then let's remember her together." The notes stumbled into harmony, two hands finding rhythm on the same keys. That night, as James tucked Ethan into bed, the boy hesitated. "Dad?" James froze, the word striking him with more power than any fortune he'd earned. "Yes, son?" Ethan's voice was small but sure. "Thank you for coming back." James leaned down, pressing a kiss to his forehead. "No, Ethan. Thank you for forgiving me." Spring arrived, painting Central Park with blossoms. One Sunday, James took Emily and Ethan back to the fountain where it had all begun. The cardboard box was gone, the shadows replaced with sunshine. Emily twirled in her dress, giggling. Ethan sat on the bench, clutching his bear, though this time his smile was wide. James watched them, a hand pressed over his heart. He thought of Claire, of Sophia, of every mistake, every loss that had led to this moment. For years, he had built walls of glass and steel, believing they would shield him from pain, but they had only trapped him. It had taken a little girl's cry, "Daddy, that's my brother," to shatter them. Now, with his children at his side, he felt whole. Not perfect, not unscarred, but whole. As the afternoon sun cast golden light over the park, James whispered to himself, "This is my legacy, not the company, not the wealth, them." Emily ran back, grabbing Ethan's hand. "Daddy, take our picture," James laughed, pulling out his phone. The camera captured the two children, side by side, smiling. Holding hands, he froze for a moment, overcome. The photo on the screen was not just an image. It was redemption. It was proof that love, though late, had triumphed. And as he wrapped his arms around both children, James knew one truth would carry him for the rest of his days. Sometimes the family we lose finds its way back, not through miracles or fortune, but through love that refuses to let go. This was not the story of a millionaire's empire. It was the story of a father's broken heart, healed by the innocence of a child, and the courage to choose love over pride. And in the end, James Whittaker discovered the greatest wealth was not counted in dollars, but in the laughter of the two children who finally called him Dad.